Not that smart.
Alrighty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your host, Alex, and Chris. Call him Anakin because he is killing all the Jedi content, your American villain voices, and as always, serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. Go follow the socials linked in the show notes, Apple, Amazon Music, and YouTube. Chris, did you get it?
Anakin killed the younglings. He didn't kill Jedis. Well, I guess he did as Darth Vader. But yeah, he slaughtered the younglings.
Which were going to become Jedi.
Well, you asked if I got it. I got it. May the 4th be with you.
See? This is levels. I'm like a rapper with all these double, triple entendres. Jedi Robinson.
No, I knew that too.
Dominated Fulham, and there is the ultimate punchline. But yes, sir, you are right. The second entendre was May the 4th be with you.
Yes, and I
happy Star Wars Day, my friend.
Yeah. But yeah, happy Star Wars Day to you. No, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. My kids love at least the first one. They've seen most of
which first one?
A New Hope, the actual first one.
Okay, gotcha.
They like that one. They like Darth Vader. They like Chewbacca. C-3PO, all the C-3PO and the boys. But yeah, they
haven't seen Ewoks yet, is what you're saying?
No, so yeah, they've not gotten to Empire Strikes Back. Walter may have watched a little bit of that one, but they haven't gotten to Jedi for sure. But they will eventually. I mean, they're still little. We got time.
Yeah, I remember I was probably about Walter's age when I saw it for the first time. And I remember that first scene when Darth Vader comes through on the ship that they dock. That scared the hell out of me, man. I was not ready for that one. I think we might have had to shut it off after that and needed to come back to it another time.
Yeah.
But how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. We're wrapping up the weekend here, and it's been a busy week and a busy weekend, and it'll be another busy week for me coming up. But I'm more curious about your weekend. You look like you went to Woodstock or something to that effect, and I'm curious to know how things went.
Yeah, so I had to dress the part. I was at Shikori Blues, and I want to get this right because the name is wild. It's like Shikori Blues and Dance Festival out in Pittsburgh. And this is a multi-stage kind of bluegrass country music festival thing. But the end dance is a very important component of this, because this is an odd collection of tripped out white people doing tripped out white people dances nonstop all the time, full shaking of the arms and moving of the feet, not at all to any beat that anyone can ascertain that they're dancing to. They're just kind of wiggling out there. And it as you said, it is pretty much Woodstock, maybe 5% the size. And instead of all that jam band stuff, it's like bluegrass and country music and all that kind of stuff. But despite being down here in the South, we know where we live, extremely liberal. There was this like massive left-wing protest bluegrass group that went on while we were there today. Great time. Shout outs to everybody. Happy Shikori is what they say. This is a 4-day thing that people camp out at.
Yeah.
And I could not. Like, we were there for maybe 4 or 5 hours this afternoon, and that was enough for me. I think that completely sober, had I been there for even 2 hours more, I would have lost all my concept of reality. I didn't know what was going on out in the woods of Shikori, but it was a beautiful day. It was nice and warm, not too hot. Had some nice drinks, some lovely arepas, and here we are.
Nice. Now, I've never been, despite living in Pittsburgh for 8 years. I've never been.
It's actually quite kid friendly. And both the little ones would get in for free. but there's like arts and crafts. There's a little like kid play area.
Yeah.
It's actually surprisingly family friendly,
Yeah.
considering
We'll
the
have to
clientele. I was
look at
I was
that for that.
expecting that we would be in like one giant weed cloud, but that wasn't actually the case. So
Everybody's just edibles, right? Nowadays.
probably, yeah. But they do
Yeah.
it twice a year. They do it in October, so we'll need to meet you out there for our Q4 hangout.
There we are. Yeah. Oh man.
Uh,
Let's hear
but
it.
great morning for me. It was a great morning for Villa yesterday. And so let's dive into Fulham. And as per usual, let's start with the setup and tactical approach. Chris, reaction to the lineup. Asensio and McGinn start. I know neither of us had McGinn in our lineup, but we did ultimately think that Emery would put him in. Still Powell, so no Tyrone Mings. And Ian Maatson comes in, which we did allude could be a possibility. Roger starting on the left.
Mm-hmm.
All I have to say on this is that the more and more I watch him, particularly this year, and as he becomes more comfortable with Unai's tactics, Ian Maatson is such a fun out ball on the left-hand side. No knock on Luka Dean, but at this point in his career, Luka Dean is not burning down the sidelines the way that Ian Maatson can as almost an auxiliary left winger. Doesn't have the dribbling ability, doesn't create some of the same opportunities. Obviously, he does with his crossing, but not necessarily off the dribble and the cutback. And the more I see of him, the more I think that after the summer, when he has a full year and a full off season with Unai Emery training him, he's gonna be dynamic next year.
Agree. Yeah, I agree. And we've both been pretty high on him for a good part of the season. In terms of the lineup, I was not super surprised at it. We both got pretty close to it in our predictions, especially since we ended up both thinking that Emery would eventually settle on McGinn. I don't think neither of us had Asensio, and I was kind of surprised to see that because or at least I don't remember particularly if you did, but I thought that his role coming off the bench has been where he's really shown this season, and I thought that might continue. But it was largely effective, and Villa created a decent amount of early, at least half chances, if not full chances at it. And I think that there's a lot to be positive about the way this group played together, because you still have some players that are sort of figuring each other out.
Yeah, it was, I guess let's get right into it. It was a very weird match, and I think it kind of emblematic of what you see at this time of year with a team that in Fulham that half has something to go for, but is really out of reach of most things of consequence, up against Villa, who has something to play for, but clearly you can see the miles on their legs. And this became end to end very quickly. Both teams looked fairly dangerous going forward, but also certainly very sloppy, lots of turnovers. You would see a great dribble and then an awful pass, two great passes, and then someone fumbling it out of bounds. This is ultimately what resulted in Villa's first goal. Fulham looked dangerous going forward. Jimenez and Konsa kind of have a coming together. Konsa falls over and the cross just can't find Jimenez. Villa then counter all the way back up the other way. Beautiful dribbling and a beautiful pass to Asensio, who then kind of has a poor settle, can't beat the keeper, goes out for a corner. And then the corner, beautiful corner, bullet header for Yori Tielemans into the upper right corner. But honestly, it was awful defending on it by Fulham to leave him that open. Yeah. And you can just hear in my voice as I'm kind of talking about this, how there's like two good things, one bad thing, two bad things, one good thing. And I feel like that was how this match went for a lot of it.
Yep. So on the corner where Tielemans scored the only goal in the game, it was a beaut of a delivery from McGinn. Letter perfect. And one of the reasons I think that Tielemans ended up being so open, it was poor defending. I'm not going to excuse it, but he had set up so far back. He was at the very edge of the area when
it was a good late run.
So yeah, it was. I think it was. I mean, I don't think there's any question. it was by design to get him to make that run and potentially be missed by the defense, where they don't expect the run coming in. So he makes a run, and McGinn puts the ball perfectly, whips the corner in, and all Tielemans has to do is power his head through it, and it is like a rocket coming off of his head, and nobody's stopping that header coming in because there was so much power to it. Austin McPhee take a bow. It was a great goal, and it was the only goal, thank God, that Aston Villa needed in this game, because we were once again able to keep a clean sheet, which is becoming a little more normal, even if at times Fulham certainly looked dangerous and able to put one past the defense.
Yeah, so 15 minutes, game kind of settles in to its rhythms, and the one thing that I noticed, and I want to point this out because I wonder, given the teams that we're going to play, if it's something that's going to be replicated in our final 3 matches. Fulham seemed to really want to get their opportunities by going over the top of Villa's defense. And I was fairly impressed by Villa's ability to stay diligent about dropping into that mid-low block and not allow those through balls. But Fulham certainly were able to get a few. And one of the most obvious examples of this was in the 21st minute. They actually pinned Villa all the way back, realized they didn't have it. They drew the ball back to their center backs. And that was the one time that Villa took the bait. Everyone jumped out and they were able to play the ball over the top. Luckily, we were able to defend it well enough to force a corner and then kind of go the other way. But it does seem like people think that they can get in behind Villa's back line. And I think that's due to the aggressiveness of an Ian Maatsen, of a Matty Cash, of even a Pau to step up into midfield, that may be something that we see replicated over the last 3 weeks.
I think that's absolutely a possibility. I'll also say, though, to particularly the credit of Matty Cash, I thought he had a fantastic game and did a really nice job tracking back. And they were going down the wings pretty consistently in my recollection of the game. So I want to shout those guys out because they were able to stay, like you said, pretty organized, and they did make it difficult most of the time on Fulham to get through.
Yeah, I agree. Matty Cash, great both ways. Honestly, we'll get to the second half, some of the nice crosses that he had that unfortunately Ali couldn't do better with, but one of the best, most steady players on the day. Honestly, got to give him credit for that. But then when you look at what Villa wanted to do, it was exactly what we've said when Villa are at their best this year: counter quickly. But you saw for the rest of the half those issues that I mentioned early on, a lot of the sloppiness. Rodgers would have a great dribble and then a poor pass. He had a couple down the right-hand side where he would kind of beat a guy and then not necessarily get the best ball out. In the 25th minute, we got the ball countered quickly. Asensio breaks, finds McGinn, but his pace lets him down, and then he just kind of gets it to Rodgers, who has the awful touch, and Massey's able to get across. And then it was the 37th minute. We kind of switched Rodgers and McGinn. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I guess, what did you make of some of the sloppiness in possession? Is that tiredness? Is that Fulham? Is that just dumb luck, bad day? Or are you seeing something else there?
I think some of it is tiredness. Some of it, Morgan Rodgers has had this issue for a good chunk of the season where he'll do a lot of dynamic dribbling and then end up giving the ball away. And I think we chalk up that a lot to youth and inexperience, and he trusts himself to beat players a lot, which is good. But then he lacks maybe a little bit on the finishing side, or at least on the what to do after you beat somebody side of this this attack. And you do have to say some of it is Fulham. They kind of mucked the game up a little bit and made it physical and difficult to get through in a lot of ways when Villa were trying to move through the middle. But so I think a combination of two things. I don't really think it's going to be fatigue at this point because now most of the players are rotating and freshened up. I think that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. It was definitely a lot of Rodgers. I candidly still don't love McGinn as a right winger.
Mhm.
I think that is kind of a square peg round hole of you need to get your captain in there somewhere, but unfortunately he's not the best player at any of the positions that he's best suited to play.
Mhm.
And so that is a concern for me when we're trying to squeeze him in there. So that doesn't help. And Asensio, we don't need to beat a dead horse on this. We've talked about this for a few weeks now. Not the player he was over the first few weeks of his loan move. I think he has definitely kind of fizzled out a little bit and probably flattered to deceive more than he's really contributed.
Mhm.
Nothing against him. I don't think it's for lack of effort. Just at this age and the amount of football that he's gotten, I'm just not sure that he's the best player that we have in that 10 spot.
Mhm.
And that actually, who is probably best in that 10 spot, Morgan Rogers or John McGinn for that matter. I thought the Morgan Rogers and John McGinn switch was interesting. And so this is something else that I wanted to get your opinion on, because my read on those first 30, 45 minutes before the change was made was that Rogers and Matson were actually getting in a bit of each other's way, because Morgan Rogers is someone who wants to stay higher. Matson wants to make those runs on the outside. And if Rogers is staying wide left, which he should, they're really kind of occupying the same space and almost sort of bringing too many defenders together. John McGinn is someone who's going to fall a little bit further back, more to an 8 spot, allowing Matson to run in behind, and then Rogers can play on the right side and sort of cut into the middle the way he likes to drift. I say this because 2 reasons. One, not the first time we've talked about Morgan Rogers maybe not necessarily being aware of the players around him and getting in their way this season. But 2, I think it's just something that we need to keep in mind potentially for next season. If Ian Matson is elevated to the first choice left back, where does Morgan Rogers go as a result to kind of get the best out of this team?
Yeah, so I think you said it pretty well. The Rogers' want to work infield when he's on the right makes him a better fit on that side when Ian Matson is behind him, or even when Luka Dean is behind him, because Luka Dean's going to come forward the same way. He's not making the exact same run, but he's going to be coming down the wing as well. So I thought it was a smart switch to make. And I thought Unai Emery actually did pretty well. I shouldn't say it like it's a surprise, but Unai Emery did pretty well pulling the strings in this game. I think he made a lot of good choices with personnel and with formation. So I think you nailed it. The switch, I think, was more effective than having them in the positions they started, if that makes sense. But still, I think Rogers, if I remember right, he had a couple or at least one nice dribbling move in the second half. I think relatively early, where he just got past a player and put a low cross in, but nobody was home. Or was that near the end of the first? I don't remember. But anyway,
There was one in the first. There was the 60th minute great dribble,
yeah,
and has that
that's the one
first.
I'm
He
thinking
kind
of.
of beats the guy and has the first time through ball to Ali, who goes a
Yeah,
little bit too far to the right and then
yeah.
fires at the keeper's legs. But let's kind of focus on the Emery point there, because I agree with you. I think full marks to him for the adjustments that he made in this game. That being one of them. The second being Fulham started the second half entirely on top. Um, they were pressing, they were dominating possession. Villa were back, couldn't really get out. And 50th minute, they actually put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it hit Sessegnon's hand. I don't know how much it really affected the shot that he got, but absolute
I mean,
handball.
he's
Yeah,
still,
like
he's still
you can't argue it. I'm just saying, like, did he get an
yeah.
advantage out of it? Yes or no? I'm not totally sure, but
Right. I don't
absolutely a
think he
handball,
did either.
absolutely the right call.
Yeah.
And then 55th minute, 5 minutes later, sloppy turnover. Unai's mad, and I believe Actually, no, sorry. It was 10 minutes later on the 64th when Fulham got that cross, Harry Wilson wide open in the net, and he puts the softest header in the world at Emi Martinez, who should have gone back across. So Fulham were not without their chances in this game, but I did like the fact that Emery didn't wait until the 70th minute to make changes. It was the 59th, McGinn and Asensio out, Ramsey and Onana, obviously a bit more physicality, bit more pace, bit more energy. And then that also allowed us to move Yuri up to the 10, pull the strings a little bit further forward. And he's been really good in that role over the past few weeks. I've really enjoyed seeing that experiment and giving him some different areas of the field to operate.
Yeah, I agree, and I love the subs that Unai Emery went with early, because it made the team was much more effective than they were in the first 15 minutes. Outside of, I don't think we called it out, the first very early out of the gates in the second half, Matty Cash plays an absolutely wonderful cross in, and Ollie Watkins can't make contact with it, and it should have at least been put on frame, if not a tap in goal, but Watkins didn't get it. So I do want to call out Matty Cash for a really, really nice cross there. But the substitutions, I thought, like, how I've said throughout this season, I really like Onana, and I really like the physicality he brings to the middle. I thought he played really well, and I thought he played particularly well if we want to move a little bit forward to when Malen came on. I actually thought they linked up decently well in both formation, and I think there were a couple of times where Onana found through balls toward Malen that really kind of get you excited, because again, we talk a lot about the young core that we think that the club are developing, and both those two are probably going to be a part of it. So, well, Malen's not as young, but still, they're probably going to be a part of it. And it's exciting maybe to see Malen with a full year and off season and getting more time on the pitch to see what he can do. And Onana, I think, again, had just a really effective day coming off the bench.
Yeah, good shout on Onana. So I won't add anything else there, but I do want to talk about Daniel Malen because it was a very interesting game from him. I think we've seen him get more and more integrated to the squad. His cameo appearances are getting a bit longer, and obviously he had that run where he scored in 3 matches straight or 3 appearances straight, something like that. And today he probably could have had one or two more. Final touch let him down, but he definitely brought something different to the squad with his pace, with his dribbling ability, with his confidence to take on the shot and take on some of these tired runners. Once again, we have someone who is probably traditionally more of a winger or more of a number 10 player that is coming in and playing the striker position at a very effective level. I think because they play not like a traditional striker, and we're getting this kind of positionless forward movement, a little bit of dynamism, something that you can't necessarily plan for. And so I think that is something that hopefully we'll see more of over the last 3 matches of the season, and certainly into next year, having that bit of a different look.
Yeah, and I mean, Malen has said that he likes playing up top the best. So there is that to it, even if he doesn't play like a traditional striker. But yeah, I agree. So I really thought he played well. Once again, I think he's just an exciting player and has a chance to be a really effective player going forward. Because what's he, 27? I think 28.
Maybe even less.
Is he less than that? Okay, for some reason I thought
Might
it was
be 25, 26.
Yeah, okay.
Keep talking.
That's so still. We've got some time with him if he stays. And
26.
So I what's that?
26.
26. Okay. I love the way he played in the game against Fulham yesterday, and again, he's just another effective player that we can bring off the bench. To have these types of resources is a real blessing, and it's going to help keep Villa in the conversation as we move forward here.
Absolutely. Anything else to add on the match, or good points, bad points?
We can go ahead to good points, bad points.
All right. The only other one that I want to shout out is Yuri Tielemans. He was incredible again. Another start. So much for those Leicester fans who said that he was already dead on his legs at 26 years old, because this man has an engine. He's still got a burst of pace. Incredible again today. Obviously, the goal that we talked about, 19th minute, he had an amazing turn and facing almost the right sideline, played this lovely 40-yard through ball to Ollie Watkins that broke both lines. 44th minute, he almost had that long range stunner that was technically tipped out.
It
Should have
was,
been called
wasn't
for
it?
a corner.
Yeah.
You saw the goalie even laughing after it,
Yep.
right? Like, he knew he
Yep.
touched it.
Yes, he did.
But the other thing that I want to shout out, and actually shout out to favored friend of the pod, Keith. He asked me in the pub a couple weeks ago whether there was a stat for Yuri's tackles on the ground, not necessarily interceptions, but and it is ground duels, and asked if I knew where he was. So I looked it up. He is 12th amongst Europe's top 5 leagues in ground duels won.
That's crazy.
According to StatMuse. That is incredible. So yeah, I think defensively underrated. He really knows how to put in a challenge and win the ball back. And we talk almost ad nauseum about how great he is when he's got a second of space at his feet. But plaudits for doing both ends, and probably does not get the credit for the defensive work that he does.
Yeah, he's for me, he's been the player of the season, and I texted that to my brother during the match. He's been so effective. He's been such a good presence in the midfield, like you said, on both sides, both ends of the pitch, and he's the most dangerous player in the Premier League when you give him space, because he will find the pass or maybe the shot, that'll be effective and score. But his ability to locate players making runs with line breaking passes, it's getting more impressive by the week for me.
I couldn't agree more. Any other good points?
We talked about Cash already, so I think that's clean sheet. We didn't mention it, but clean sheet.
Clean sheet. You're right. Yep.
We'll take a clean sheet at any day of the week. I'd rather see them coming than not. So I feel like we've gotten more clean sheets in the last 6 weeks than we did in the previous part of the season, the rest of the season.
I'm going to say something with completely no agenda whatsoever, Chris, just stating a fact. Clean sheet with Pau Torres in the lineup. Who would have guessed that would be possible?
No agenda there.
Yeah, none whatsoever. All right, I've only got one bad point, and I mean, it's stretching for a bad point, but with Forest loss, this was a game where we had the opportunity to really improve the goal differential. Seriously, I know you and I joke about this, but Forest, they're at what, a plus 12, and we're at a plus 6 or plus 7. So let's say we could have got 2 more goals in there. Now all of a sudden you're at a plus 9. They lose another one, which we need them to. Let's say 2-0. Now you're trying to outscore Nottingham Forest, who don't score a ton of goals over your last couple games, as a potential chance to overcome them. So, missing that opportunity to close the gap, not just on the points, but on the goal differential side, I was a bit let down by that when this one was over, because the opportunities were there. The Mullen one crashing off the bar, a couple of the Ollie Watkins chances, it certainly was there for us, not just saying oh, we should have scored more.
Yep. Yeah. So Forest is plus 12 and we are plus 6. Would you believe, though, that in one more game, we've only scored 2 more goals than Forest?
That actually is pretty surprising.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider, as you sent to me today, that we have created the second most big chances in the entire league.
Yep. So
shout out Ollie Watkins.
That's that is an indictment on the finishing, and if you want to look at the positive side, you're creating chances. That's the only thing from a managerial standpoint that you can do, right? If you want to credit Unai Emery for that, you're putting the team in positions where chances are being created. So the finishing is a concern, and I mean, Mullins, I don't know if that technically qualified as a big chance. It probably did in the 96th minute or whatever it was. But that one, I mean, he lashed that thing off the top of the bar, or off the bottom of the bar, I should say. And I thought it was going to bounce in for a second, but it ricocheted back out.
That was centimeters away from being one of those that hits the inside of the bar, goes like dead down and lands, a foot inside the line. That was unbelievable. But since we're talking about goal differential, let's roll right into larger impact on the season. So a lot of results did go our way this weekend. Not everyone, but a lot. So Forest lose, as we mentioned before, level with us on points, one fewer match played. They still need to play Crystal Palace tomorrow. Newcastle only manage a draw. They're still in play. Chelsea were able to win against Liverpool, who were clearly still hungover from the title
on the beach, man.
From the title win on the beach. Which is sad because they won the title away from Anfield. I really was expecting a little more of like, before we get on the beach, let's at least win the next game at home to give people to celebrate. Wasn't about to happen. Now, one that was interesting though, we'll need to talk about the Bournemouth component of this later this week, but Arsenal did lose. And so now they technically are not safe even from Man City in third place. Obviously safe within the Champions League, but I think they're still going to want to finish above City. Why does this help us? They play Newcastle on the penultimate day of the season, and they might actually need to take that game more seriously than we anticipated.
Yep. So they are safe for Champions League. They cannot finish lower than. Yeah, well, I guess they technically could.
Technically, if they lost out and we all won out.
If we lost out, or if they lost out and either Forest or Villa win out, that would be it. Yeah, that would get them there. So they are not mathematically, safe from losing out on Champions League. And they didn't look good at all on Saturday. So
didn't look great against PSG in the first leg either.
No, we'll talk about. I mean, they looked better after the goal, after they conceded the early goal, and then I think they kind of settled in the late first, early second half. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all the teams bunching up around, because now you have a bunch of teams like it has been through the entire season. But Arsenal is second, Villa are seventh, 7 points separate them, and everybody but Forest are on 35 games. Pardon me. So I think it's going to be sort of a really fun finish, since we've already got the title decided and relegation decided. That Champions League and European spots is where the interest is now, and it makes me feel a lot more like it's anybody's game because of the way results went for Villa this week. I know that's reactionary, and I understand that. But when we first started talking about this, we said, oh man, I don't know. We've got a pretty tough run in where some other teams don't have it as tough as we do. But now if you look at the way things have stacked up after this week, Villa look to have one of the easier run-ins now compared to, say, Arsenal. Arsenal still have Southampton, but they've like you mentioned, they've got Newcastle and Liverpool are the other two games. So whether or not Liverpool respond, who knows? If they look like they did over the weekend here, it's all she wrote. But it's so I think that this now becomes a very exciting time of the year with a lot of things still on the table, a lot of fluctuations and permutations possible.
It is, and we don't need to go through all of them again because we did that the last episode. But I think the most interesting one is Chelsea's run in now, because they play Newcastle away and they play Forest away on the last game of the season. This could wind up the scenario that you see rolling in our group chat, and I've seen it actually in a few different Villa groups on Facebook and Twitter now, that our best path is Chelsea winning out, bringing Newcastle and Forest, back down to earth for us. Forest does seem to be fading away a little bit the way a lot of people predicted them to. And so that could be our path to Champions League. It also could be our path out of the Champions League if they all kind of like triangle win against one another, not giving us the necessary points. So you put it best. We don't need to predict this, every single episode as we see this thing out. But I feel a lot more optimistic now than I did going into the weekend.
Exactly.
And I think that's the best place to leave it.
Yep.
Anything else, my friend?
I think that's it. It is Sunday night, so we have to get out for our traditional Last of Us watch party.
That's right. He may not be the Mandalorian, but we are still watching. Well, I guess he's not really. No spoilers. Pedro Pascal. That's what I'm getting at.
No spoilers.
Yeah, I got nothing else, man. Everybody, we will have our Bournemouth preview out probably Thursday evening. So keep an eye out for that one. And, as we get into this week, Chris, may the 4th be with you again. And up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.